Okay, so this tarot reading for 2025. This is the year of the Hermit. So the numbers in 2025 add up to 9, and 9 in the major arcana is the Hermit card. So this makes this year all about introspection, meditation, spiritual work, seeking. The Hermit is very introverted, turned inwards. This is about where we reflect with ourselves, sometimes by ourselves. And it's a wonderful archetype. It's one of my favorite. And if I'm doing a tarot reading and this comes out prescriptively, shall we say, then often I do invite people to take some time meditating and going into their spiritual practices, whatever they are. So the spread for today, for this year, is based on this being the Hermit year, and we have 6 positions. Those of you who've done beginning of the year readings with me before in previous years will recognise the format, of course. So we have the Hermit, and in this position, this will be about what you're turning inwards towards, what you're seeking this year, what's calling you this year. And another thing about the Hermit, so the Hermit is this figure, got this kind of old man, bearded old man in a cloak, sort of Gandalf-y archetype, carrying a staff, but also carrying a lantern with a star in it. And so the idea is that as the Hermit seeks inwards, so their lantern lights up not only the next step on their path, but also shines a light, guides the way to anyone around them in the darkness, because they see the lantern and there is something to follow, a point of reference. So as you seek inwards, what will you be illuminating for yourself, and then what will you be shining into the world, even as you hold your own personal space and keep within your own sort of personal boundaries. And the other major arcana card up here that you'll see is the Moon. So the Moon is number 18 in the major arcana, which again adds up to 9. So it's almost like the shadow card of the Hermit. And it's a lovely pairing because the Moon is often about what is hidden. You've got unconscious work here. So you've got a creature from the deep, sort of crab, lobster creature coming out of the deep water and stepping onto this path that goes off into the distance under a full moon. You've got a sort of wolf and a dog there. So the path is illuminated by the light of the moon, which is different from daylight. And again, the Hermit's using a lantern, so we have different lights on things already this year. And the creature's coming out of the deep. So the water, the deep water, symbolizes our unconscious. And so this might be what sort of shadows are coming out of the unconscious this year. This is a wonderful opportunity. So if we don't like what's coming up, we try to kind of suppress it, push it back under the water, it's still going to be there, and there's going to be tension there. But if we recognize what's coming up, and if we investigate it, so we've got this Hermit archetype turning inwards, reflecting, learning, seeking. If we use anything that comes up from the unconscious as an opportunity for investigation, for learning, for seeking, for meditation, spiritual practice, then we can have a wonderful time with it, because every unconscious pattern has a purpose. And some of them we want to keep, and some of them we want to change. And we can only do that. Some of them we might even want to amplify, not just keep. But we can only do that. We can only have our unconscious patterns working for us if we're aware of them. So the moon brings this opportunity for these unconscious patterns to come into the light and for us to work with them, and it's a kind of initiatory process. So that's the second position. So these are two major arcana cards of the year: the Hermit, the main card, and then the Moon is this shadow card. And then you'll see here I've got the 4 nines from the minor arcanas from the suits below. So there's a position for each of these as well. 9 of Swords here. You've got someone sitting up in bed, and in the darkness, suspended in the air above them, are 9 swords. This person's got their head in their hands. They are possibly not able to sleep or have just had a nightmare. And the 9 of Swords is kind of a card of mental anguish. Now, this is not a prediction for the year. Again, it's an invitation. So the Suit of Swords is about what's going on mentally. And so the superpower, of course, is mindfulness, or neurolinguistic programming, any of this sort of conscious work that we can bring. And the 9 of Swords is an invitation to examine your fears. Now, although this person is they're in the darkness with these swords kind of hanging above them, they're also safe in bed at the same time. So this is something that's going on in their mind. It doesn't mean that it's any less valid or any less real, but it is something that's going on. It's a mental process. So this 9 of Swords position is going to bring to light for us what mental processes, what are our fears? How are we framing our fears? What's upsetting us? What keeps us up at night, basically? And we'll see what card comes up for it, but I'm hopeful that we'll get a resource, an invitation to, again, all of the invitations here with the Hermit are towards examination, spiritual growth, seeking, illumination, shining that lamp. And even if you don't get a whole path ahead, getting some insight into the next step. Next, we have the 9 of Wands. So the Wands is the suit of fire, creativity. And the 9 of Wands is maybe a bit more comfortable than the 9 of Swords, but it's a card of kind of not quite there. And so you've got a person standing, they've got one of the wands, the staff's in their hand. They look like they've been in the wars. They've got like a bandage around their head. The other ones are upright in the ground behind them, like a boundary. And the 9 of Wands is really an acknowledgement, if you have been going through a lot, a reminder that things aren't quite there yet. So there are 10 numbers in each of the minor arcana suits, and so 9 is towards the closure of that suit, but just not quite there yet. But that you have already surmounted a lot of other obstacles, so that you can already sort of start to see a future where whatever's going on is over. So in our reading today, the card that comes up here is going to indicate, what's perhaps unfinished business, energy wise. If one's cards come up in a reading sort of prescriptively, then I would say, do some energy work around this. So what energy is not quite finished, not quite closed. And again, that invitation to seek the next step in how do we get the closure on that energy? How do we put an end to things that are nearing the end of their natural cycle? So the Moon card also reminds us of cycles as well, and we do have cycles throughout the tarot, and the 9s in the minor arcana are towards the end of the cycle of the pips. And then we have the 9 of Cups. So Cups is the heart, the emotions, and this is a lovely card. It's sometimes described as the wish fulfillment card, a wishing card. I see it as being very much about gratitude. You've got a person sitting here who is here in the center. They've got 9 cups displayed above them, sort of curtain over this display. I'm not sure if it's a table or shelf behind them, and then 9 cups there, and they're sitting there. They're quite richly dressed. They look quite well fed. They're kind of abundant. They're not wanting for anything. and they're sort of sitting in a way that claims a space as being their own. So this is for me a card of plenty, and again, because it is about the heart, the cups, the emotions, it's about having emotional plenty. And because there are 9 cups there and are so proudly displayed, although this person is on their own, the nines, the hermit, the nines are all about solitude in some way. But even so, I imagine this person having, plenty of cups, so that if a friend drops by, or maybe a stranger even, they say, "Oh yeah, I've got plenty of cups here. Have a drink," and so that they can offer some sustenance, some conviviality, as soon as it's desired. So it is a wonderful card, and in our reading today, this position is going to be about, what do you have to share from the heart? What do you have abundance of and plenty of? And it doesn't have to necessarily be about material abundance, but like, where are you, able to say, yeah, I'm doing okay here. I have love to share. I have kindness to share. I have compassion. I have plenty of compassion and enough cups for everybody. And then finally, with the 9 of Pentacles. So the Pentacles is the suit of earth, of it's very grounded in the suit of material things. And the 9 of Pentacles, we see someone in a garden. They're, again, very richly dressed. They've got a falcon or hawk, I think it might be a merlin, but some kind of sort of hunting hawk resting on their hand, and it has a hood over its head. So falconry, this sort of thing, was only available to the very wealthy. And so this is a card of abundance. Often when it comes up in a reading, it can be about recognizing that you've earned what you've earned, often through hard work. The garden is plentiful. There are 9 pentacles growing in it on vines, also some grapes growing on the vines. And the 9 of Pentacles is about material abundance, plenty. Again, there's an invitation to gratitude, to accepting the gifts that the universe has given you. And if you are in this position of abundance, of recognizing that, although there may be hard work involved, there will also be a degree of fortune involved in that as well. I think that's a really important point, actually, especially nowadays. We have a lot of narratives about wealth somehow coming through merit. And that actually isn't the only way that wealth comes. And I think it's important to sort of recognize those narratives and say, no, that's not necessarily the case. Even this person here in their garden, they haven't tended that garden on their own. I know this because in the tarot, the 7 of Pentacles shows somebody else growing this, what I imagine to be the same garden, but also because I know that if you are the sort of if you have the sort of wealth that in medieval times would let you explore falconry and be this richly dressed, you didn't do that on your own. And for all of us, to bring that into modern context, in something maybe more relatable for you and I, none of us gets where we are on our own. And so, although it is a card of recognizing your hard work and what you've worked for, also recognizing that, there is fortune involved and there is community support involved in that, and that no one does it alone. But in our reading, this position is about, where do we have abundance in this moment, and what can we be thankful for? So that is our spread. I'll go ahead and start pulling some cards. Today I'm using the Light Seers Tarot by Chris Ann. It's a favourite, I know, and a lovely deck to bring in the new year. So I'll invite you to take a deep breath. turn inwards, hermit-like, and just set your intention to receive what you need from today's reading. Okay, so our first card is for the Hermit. So as we turn inwards, what are we turning to, or how are we turning inwards? And it is the Four of Wands. So you can see here, I'm just going to hold it up to the camera and zoom out, try and get it more in focus. You can see here that in this Four of Wands, we have a lot of celebration going on, and celebration is the what I would call the key word for the Four of Wands. So you've got something that looks like a festival. There's a kind of tent. It's out under these beautiful multicolored skies with the stars. And you've got two people dancing. I think one's got a symbol. It's got ribbons on. The tent's decorated with 4 poles with flames on the top and with some bunting. And the people look like they're just having a lovely time, and you can see the energy flowing through them as well, which is one of the things that people tend to love about the Light Seers deck, that you can see the energy flowing through it. And so in this position of the Hermit, it's a really interesting one to come up for the Hermit, actually, because the Four of Wands is quite an extroverted card. So the Hermit's introverted and the Four of Wands is quite extroverted. And this is an invitation perhaps to that the first thing in our inward quest for the year, or perhaps even a recurring theme in our inward quest for the year, is things to celebrate. And this is so important at the moment. You know, the world is in a right old state. And this is impacting everybody in different ways. So it may be that you're in a position of some confusion or some things not sitting right with the world being in the state that it is. And that, again, that's a collective experience that many of us are sharing at the moment. So if you are in this place where things aren't sitting right, then the invitation is to still celebrate the small victories and the big victories when there are big victories. Celebrate the things that are there to be celebrated. Don't let yourself become overwhelmed by the these sort of Nine of Swords things, the things that keep us awake at night. But instead, we have an invitation here to celebrate with our communities. And the Four of Wands community is about beyond your close friends and family, the people that your sort of very intimate community, going out a little further. So this often represents milestones, anything, birthdays, rites of passage, community events, bank holidays, whatever they are. So holidays can be things like holidays that many people celebrate together. We've just had New Year, the transition from 2024 to 2025, and lots of different people celebrate that in different ways. And you may live in a place where if you chose to go out onto the street in a town at New Year, there might be fireworks or celebrations, and a wider community than just your sort of friends and family are celebrating. So again, there's an invitation to sort of not only to celebrate, but to acknowledge and tend to and build that community in a way that works for you. So for some of you, that might be about organizing festivals, demonstrations, art projects, whatever it is. The Wands is, of course, about creativity. So there is this sort of creative streak as well. it might be about not having to organize those things because someone else in the community has organized these things. This is something that I saw a lot when I lived in the Algarve. There are a lot of sort of hippie communities and eco communities there. And every now and then you'd have someone pop up and say, "Hello, I'm organizing my own community. Would you like to come and join?" And I always wondered what it was about where that choice came from to organize your own community rather than to join a community that already exists. And so that is a question as well. You know, what do you need to organize or contribute, or where is there already something happening that you can perhaps join into? And I know that there are people who are watching and listening today who are already very active in sort of communities as well. So I'd like to celebrate you, because the work that you do is invaluable and it keeps us all going, doesn't it? Um, so so yeah, the hermit is inviting us to turn inwards into how we can make turning outwards. As we turn inwards, how can we make turning outwards something meaningful? So how can we connect with meaning in those communities? And for anyone who might be thinking, I've never been part of a community, community is a very wide term. And if you're here in this reading, then you are part of a community because we are all here together, bringing our energy together. And so this is an example of a community, a space where you're welcome to be. Okay, so we have the Four of Wands for the Hermit. For the Moon, then, what might be coming up unconsciously? What might be coming from the unconscious, and how can we work with the unconscious? Because the other thing, as well as things coming out of the unconscious, is that we can dive into it, and that can be very pleasurable, and it can be very meaningful, and it can help you to achieve the outcomes that you want to achieve. So for this year, how can we work with the unconscious? And we have here the Hanged Man. So this is a card of suspension, of new perspective, and things just being a little bit different, perhaps than expected. Traditionally, it usually has someone upside down in this card. We've got a person, maybe an acrobat, sort of hanging in silks. So their head and their hand, one hand are pointing downwards, and their upper legs and pelvis are sort of held by the silks, and then their lower legs hang down, and they're catching their lower legs with the other hand. So they're suspended. They're in a position it might be difficult for a lot of us to get into, but this person in the card is very secure. They you can tell by the way they hold their body, they're confident in the way they're holding, and they're reaching downwards to their hand, and just where their hand reaches downwards, we've got light shining out, and we've got it's like a pool, so maybe of water, but maybe of magic. So they're kind of touching into the magic as well. And so the Hanged Man, it's a major arcana card as well, which is a card of spirit, of the soul journey, the soul path. Yeah, it's a major arcana card. So it may be that we get as much out of our sort of unconscious work as part of our turning inwards as we do as part of our sort of turning outwards this year. And if something comes up, if, just appears out of the water, surprises you, perhaps scares you, then the first invitation of the Hanged Man is to turn it around, look at it from a completely different perspective. This is one of my favorite teaching cards because it's really good for teaching reverse cards. It's when the Hanged Man is upright, everything else is upside down. And so there may be things coming up that actually turn our world around, that force us into that different perspective. This position that this person's in, it is a position of choice. This person has chosen to be in it. But also, once you're there, once you're suspended, you've kind of got to be in it. It might not be easy to get back up. And so what you have to do is accept the position you're in and relax into it and find what there is to be found there. So this is a card of acceptance. It's also a card of sacrifice. And sacrifice is a really interesting concept, because a sacrifice is not a sacrifice if the thing that you're giving up doesn't have meaning to you. Otherwise, it's just a trade, right? So sometimes we choose to sacrifice something for something else that is even more meaningful for us. And all these cards are about, all our tarot readings are about meaning, aren't they? So, but especially with this sort of hermit moon connection going on, we've got meaning. And so, what do you wish to get out of this year? And if you want things to change, there's this saying, isn't there? If you keep doing what you've always done, you keep getting what you always get. If you want things to change, is there something you're willing to sacrifice? And it might be a big sacrifice. So that's one possible interpretation with the Hangman. But there's definitely, I would emphasize the perspective, because we have the moonlight, which is different from the daylight, because we have the hermit's lantern light, which is different again from those sort of lights from the sky. And because we have the Hanged Man inverted, changing your perspective, looking from the other direction, is something that could be really powerful for us this year. And I'd like to speak a little bit about that as well, because in the discourse that we get in, many of the places where there is discourse, the news, the internet, conversations, wherever it is, we often get to look at it from the other perspective, as if there are only two perspectives, and you get both sides, don't you? Here where I am in the UK, the sort of national broadcaster tries to show both sides of an argument, which can be absolutely ridiculous, because you can have, a scientist saying something that's scientifically accurate, and someone who doesn't believe it is put on that same platform to show both sides of this argument. And that's not a balanced viewpoint. It's just an argument. It's an oppositional thing. There are always more than two perspectives. There are always more than two viewpoints. And sometimes the other perspective is the nuance. Sometimes the other perspective is to not make generalizations. So instead of saying this generalization or that generalization must be true, so if I'm used to this generalization, in order to take the other perspective, I'm going to go to that generalization. What if generalization isn't useful here? So when choosing to take other perspectives, always remember there's more than one other perspective. And we tend to find those perspectives by listening rather than speaking. Okay, so the minor arcana suits now, starting with the Nine of Swords. So what is our Nine of Swords this year? What is keeping us up at night? What are our worries and our fears, and those things that creep in perhaps when we're at our most vulnerable? Oh, this is interesting. So we have the Three of Pentacles. So our card for the Hermit, for what we're turning inwards towards, was this kind of extroverted, possibly extroverted, it was community, the energy of community. The Three of Pentacles is also about community. It's about community building. It's about how we rely on each other. So you can see here 3 people, they're working on a hanging. They've each got different tools, balls of yarn. One's up a ladder holding a part of it. So they're working on the same project in different ways. And I love this depiction of the Three of Pentacles, where it's a reminder that we work together. Again, as I was saying, like in the Nine of Pentacles, we're reminded that none of us ever achieves anything on our own. We're always in the context of the people around us. And this Three of Pentacles, it's a card of community and working together. Now, again, this is probably a pretty big deal for 2025. How do we find community? How do we create community? And, what are the fears that we have around community? So it's really interesting. There's a lot here about how we relate to each other. Because sometimes our fears, those, the nightmare things, the things that sort of hit us in the middle of the night, they can be about the different tensions that occur in community. So it can be, what is the right thing to do? How do we do the right thing? How do we get everyone on the same page to do the right thing? How do we get everyone to agree what is the right thing? All of these kinds of questions. And so these questions might be a little bit tricky this year. They might leave us second guessing ourselves. So the reminder is really, if you are part of a community, and that can be with the Three of Pentacles, it could be your family, it could be your wider community, it could be an online community, it could be the community of the world. There will be several communities that you're part of. It's an invitation to, again, sort of work together. So again, that thing of like, you don't have to be the leader. There doesn't have to be any leader, but instead more sort of collaborative approaches can be useful. And if you're having fears about that, if you're having mental discomfort about that, or the stories and narratives in your mind, so that with the Nine of Swords, with the swords, it's often about the mind, the narratives, the stories we tell ourselves, some of which are true, some of which are not, some of which are ours, some of which have come from other people, sometimes passed down for a really long time. But examining those narratives about what it means to connect with other people and to co-create with other people. These people here in the Three of Pentacles are co-creating. And acknowledging any discomfort you have, acknowledging any questions you have, and, taking them to the Hermit, going inside with them. And acknowledging also that not everything that goes through our minds is true. That's a really, really interesting, useful piece of advice. Not everything that goes through our minds is true. So almost an invitation that when we get those Nine of Swords thoughts, fears, and so on, then we can bring in the Three of Pentacles, and it's more grounded because the Pentacles are grounded in the earth. We can find something a little more solid, and it might be in doing things as well, physically doing things. So the people here are crafting, they are creating a physical work of art. And so actually physically doing things can be an antidote as well to those Nine of Swords worries when they do come up. I know when I was very ill a few years ago, I spent months basically sitting up in bed knitting, and that knitting together of fibers held me together. So physically creating something for the sake of creating something, can be a really good way to ground yourself, to bring yourself back in when you have those fears and worries and that whatever keeps you up in the middle of the night. The next position then is the Nine of Wands. So remember, Wands is about fire, creativity, passion. And the Nine of Wands is really about what this year is coming to a close, but is not quite over yet. And we have the Three of Swords. So 2 3s already in these minor arcana suits. We had the Three of Pentacles. Now we've got the Three of Swords. And in this card, there is a person in they have a facial expression of anguish. And they're below a red heart, which is sort of against a barren landscape. And there are red threads coming out from this heart, this kind of almost slicing through it and also binding this person up. And this is a card of heartbreak. So to give a very simple reading here, to have this card in the position of the Nine of Wands, for anyone who has been going through a really hard time recently, heartbreak, it is almost over. It's not over yet, but it is almost over. Things will change. It cannot go on forever. And the Three of Swords is an interesting one. Again, it's the swords, so it's about the mind, what's going on mentally, but the heart is right there, big and central in this card. And in fact, the most colourful thing in this card, which is otherwise quite sort of black and white or grayscale. So, even though it's a card of the mind, the heart is the thing really that we're focused on. And so it invites us to introspect on our thoughts about our emotions and our emotions about our thoughts and how they join together. So in this position of the Nine of Wands, it is an invitation to healing. Because after heartbreak always comes healing, always. That doesn't mean things go back to the way they were before. It doesn't necessarily mean that you get what you want or what you think you want. But healing does come. The heart is still there. The heart endures. And sequentially in the tarot, the next card after the Three of Swords is the Four of Swords. It's the Sword of Rest, which really fits in with this message of the Nine of Wands that, if you've been going through the wars a bit, although it's not quite over yet, it will be soon. There will be a chance for rest. So it's not my favourite card for 2025, but in the position that it's in, it is a good card for anyone who has been experiencing the Three of Swords. And of course, one of the functions of tarot is to acknowledge all of the experiences that come with being alive. So this too shall pass. The Nine of Cups then, where do we have emotional abundance, pleasure, joy, things going right, plenty to share? This is interesting. So this is the Moon. So the Moon was our shadow card for the year, being the number 18 in the major arcana, which adds up to 9, the number of the year, the Hermit year. And I love, this is one of my favorite moons actually, because here we have someone who is diving really deep and they're just floating beneath the water, and they've got their hand upraised, and there are rays of moonlight coming down from the full moon. It's actually unclear whether they're catching the moonlight or whether they're reflecting it back. And of course, the moon is about reflection. The moon reflects light, and in reflecting light, becomes the moon, and brings us this light in the darkness. And in this card, the most of the card, more than half the card, is taken up by the water. So if you contrast that with the Rider-Waite-Smith, where the water's quite low down and you've got something coming out of the water, this is very deep water, and you've got someone who has plunged into the water. And of course, cups is associated with the element of water as well. So it coming out in our 9 of cups position is a nice place for it to come up. And so it's a reminder that this is where big things are going to happen this year, in this moon, in the unconscious, in changing position, in deciding to lean into that stretch, whatever the stretch is for you, and deciding to dive into what it is that you're diving into. And yeah, unconscious work all the way, which is very compatible with this 9 of cups, this sort of gratitude and having plenty. Here we've got these 9 cups, here we've got all this water filled with them. And it reminds us that when our unconscious is in alignment, when it is filled with what we want it to be filled with, then what comes forth from us is what we want to send forth into the world. So it's an invitation to make sure that your unconscious is aligned with what you want to be grateful for, what you want to share in the world. And then finally, the 9 of Pentacles. So material, abundance, stability, pleasure, having the stability of the Pentacles to be able to enjoy this garden. What's our 9 of Pentacles for the year? It's the Pentacles card. It's the King of Pentacles. And look at this. Again, one of my favorite Kings of Pentacles. So we've got a bearded older man, could be the Hermit, but it's not in his cloak, he's just in jeans and a jumper. He's sitting in a library, enjoying the pentacle that he's got in his hand, and with a lovely big sort of wolfy dog beside him. And this is the King of Pentacles from the Light Seers deck. So the King of Pentacles is a card of security. We talked about security in the Pentacles and the abundance from the 9 of Pentacles. And the King of Pentacles really just amplifies this. So the King of Pentacles, this King of Pentacles may not be completely, really rich, but has definitely got enough to be comfortable, is surrounded by the things that he loves and is enjoying it, is appreciating it. So really appreciating what we have in terms of our material abundance. And material abundance is about wealth, and is also about health. So, the roof over your head, that's abundance. The food in your belly, that's abundance. The heating on when it's very, very cold, that's abundance. The access to books, we've got a library here, that's abundance. Having a body that works for you in the way that you want it to work for you, that's abundance. And the King of Pentacles this King of Pentacles in particular is really, really inviting us to appreciate that. And that's exactly the message of the 9 of Pentacles. So it's such a lovely pairing to end the reading on, is that really appreciating all that you have. And if you are in a position where you don't necessarily have sort of long-term stability and security, because not everyone does, so, whether you're able to look ahead to tomorrow or next month or next year and say, yeah, I'll still be okay at that time, all of those are things to appreciate. Even if it's only till tomorrow and tomorrow doesn't feel far away at all, appreciate this day. Appreciating all that we have. and enjoying it, enjoying life. So if you do have a roof over your head, enjoy it. You might want to decorate it in a particular way. If you have whatever it is that you have, whether it's your health or it's your wealth, any kind of material resources, whether they belong to you, whether they belong to your community and you have access to them, really sort of appreciating them, and there is amplification there. So there is security with us, there is stability with us, even when it doesn't necessarily feel like it, even if we've got sort of that three of swords, nine of swords, nine of wands combo going on. There's still stability in this reading. There's still stability in this year. And we can find stability where it is. And when we do amplify that, that's our invitation from this King of Pentacles. So it's a lovely card to end the reading on. I'll give you a very, very quick summary of the reading. So our card of the year is the Hermit, who encourages going inwards, and the card that the Hermit offered us was the Four of Wands, which is a card of celebration, milestones, and community. So there is a thread of community running through this reading. The shadow card of the year is the Moon, and the card the Moon offered us was the Hanged Man. So things might be coming up from the unconscious, and we can work with them by inviting in other perspectives. Remember, there's always more than one other perspective. The Nine of Swords, the fears, worries in the night, gave us the Three of Pentacles. So again, this sort of invitation to community and a reminder that when we are worried, we can ground ourselves, we can bring ourselves back in by making something, building something, and finding a place where you can contribute what you've got, because everybody's got something to contribute. So finding a way to contribute that works for you will do wonders for those swords. The Nine of Wands, so what's ready to come to its end of its cycle, and that you're maybe ready for it to come to the end of its cycle, but it's just not quite there yet. We had the Three of Swords. So for anyone who has been going through a tough time, this is where the heart and the mind unite. Hang on in there. We're getting there. We do move on. And of course, sequentially, the next card from the Three of Swords, the Four of Swords, which is rest, perhaps well-earned rest. The Nine of Cups, so, where do we have plenty? Emotional abundance. We had the Moon, so reminding us back to that unconscious work, and an invitation to really dive deep into whatever's calling you, really. And then the Nine of Pentacles, material stability and abundance and security. We had the King of Pentacles. So really an affirmation that you're safe, and that stability, that security is with us. And the deck that I used for this reading is the Light Seers Tarot. Thank you very much for joining me, and I wish you a wonderful 2025.